Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Inclusivity Mixer. This is our last day. Today, we're showcasing LGBTQ and disabilities. I have with me 4 panelists, and my name is Simmons. I will be moderating this panel. And to kick us off, I'm going to introduce everyone, and I'm going to read their bios just so everyone is familiar with the panelists. And I'm going to ask the panelists to just say their names each time before they speak, just so that just in case if people have technical difficulties and are unable to see the speaker. To kick us off, we have Dr. Amber Knight. She is the Assistant Professor of Political Science and Public Administration and earned her degree from University of California, Santa Cruz, and from UNC Chapel Hill. Her research generally focuses on contemporary democratic theory, disability theory, and feminist political thought. She has published articles in the Journal of Politics, Hypatia, and Politics Groups and Identities, among other outlets. She is currently working on a book project tentatively titled The Politics of Prenatal Genetic Testing, Reproductive Autonomy, and Disability Justice, co-authored with Dr. Joshua Miller. Prenatal genetic testing provides remarkably accurate genetic information about a fetus to prospective mothers, especially in the detection of genetic impairments. These books analyzes the political implications of this rapidly developing and routine technology. We argue that even though prenatal testing is touted as a means to enhancing women's reproductive choices, it actually provides opportunities for intensified control over women's productive decision practice.
You don't have to explain more of the book, Sue-Ann. No worries.
Sorry, I didn't read the whole thing before we started this. Okay, so jumping over to Marty. Marty Musser is the Advocacy Coordinator at Disabilities Rights and Resources, a Center for Independent Living, which covers Mecklenburg, Gaston, Cabarrus, and Union counties. She is a certified ADA coordinator through the University of Missouri. She serves on the Civil Rights Committee for the National Council on Independent Living. And Mr. Billy Pickens is a graduate of UNC Charlotte and has a BA in Communication Studies and a minor in journalism. He interned at the North Carolina Division of Services for the Blind and Seacrest Studios at Levine Children's Hospital in Charlotte. He is currently working at as the Youth Outreach Coordinator for Exceptional Children's Assistance Center, ECAC, and has served as President of the Student Advisory Board. And Billy has traveled to all 50 states, and he's born with a condition called Norris disease and is totally blind with hearing loss. And Nada, who is from Yemen and currently works at Macedon Technology and Software Consultant. She graduated with a double major in computer science and international relations, and is very passionate about advocacy, representation of folks from underrepresented identities. She's currently working on a project titled Disability in Tech that aims to create a community and advocacy space for folks with disability to thrive in the tech industry. Nada is also a member of the Out in Tech leadership team, helping with facilitating the disability/accessibility channel and community space. What was that mouthful? Okay. time for other people to do some talking. So as we, as panelists speaks for the first time, if you're comfortable, please introduce yourself again and maybe state your disability if you're comfortable doing that. Okay, so the first question we have is, in what ways have you been able to demonstrate the value you bring to an organization with your identity? So that could be anything you want to talk about. Whatever identity you choose to talk about.
I can go ahead and take this one. So this is Marty, and I'm just going to give a quick visual introduction for those who can't see or have low vision. I am a white woman in my 30s. I have reddish brown hair. I'm sitting in front of a blue wall with a gallery pictures and artwork all in white. But to get to the question, I think that one thing that I bring to disability rights and resources is just being someone with a hidden disability. Centers for Independent Living, which is kind of generically what my agency is, we are staffed by a majority of people with disabilities, which but I think when a lot of people think about disabilities, they tend to think about the things that we can see. And so, you know, I'm pleased that, you know, over the last, I don't know, 5 or 10 years in particular, I think hidden disabilities are becoming something that are considered a lot more. And so personally, I have mental health things that I deal with. I have depression and anxiety and panic disorder. And, you know, it affects my life in a lot of different ways, but I'm very pleased to be able to bring that perspective to people in my agency. I think it's really helpful when we're talking about the people that we serve, you know, to consider all kinds of people with disabilities and not just people. So.
What skills have you leveraged to find professional success?
I can go ahead, and I'll also answer the first question a little bit as well. So my name is Neda, and also just as a visual description, I am a woman of color, very short hair, and I'm sitting in front of a blue wall with some mirror shapes stuck to it. So yeah, so just to answer the first question, as a person, you know, with invisible disabilities as well, and as someone who, you know, navigates the world differently or experiences the world differently, I think one of the most valuable things I have been able to contribute was bringing that new perspective and that new background, and also understanding that it is very valuable and very important in the work that I do. So I work as a software consultant, and we build products for different businesses and different clients. So when we build those products, you know, no one has ever stopped and, you know, asked, how accessible is this website we're building? What language are we using? Is it gender inclusive? Is it this and that? So having that person who have experienced those things kind of come up and say those things and make sure that, you know, they are heard and they are prioritized, so that whatever we build is accessible and is inclusive, and, you know, make sure that people feel seen and heard when they see that, has been really important. And to answer the second question, what skills have I brought, or what, sorry, was the question what skills have helped me in my professional success?
What skills have you leveraged to defines professional success?
Thank you. Yeah, so for me personally, I think something that has been very important is, networking and making sure we are, feeling comfortable being our authentic selves. At the beginning of my career, I used to be very, embarrassed to mention my invisible disabilities. I have epilepsy and ADHD, and so they greatly affect my memory a lot of times. So when I would go into interviews or when I would talk with people, I would not want them to know just because of some of the pre-existing ideas they have about some of these, or, they might not necessarily understand what they look like and what they mean. So I would not necessarily share that. And then I realized in the long run, it didn't really help me at all. When I finally became comfortable sharing that, asking for accommodations, talking about my experiences, with pride and comfort, it absolutely helped me a lot in networking with people who value those experiences or who understand what these experiences are like. And it really helped me just network with people, talk to them, as well as volunteer work and, projects that are important to me, such as Out in Tech and disability-related projects.
Can I jump in as well? Great. So just to kind of piggyback off some of the themes that have already been developed so far, I think, Amber Knight, I forgot to say my name. My name is Amber. There's a visual representation. I am in my 30s, wearing glasses in a room with a Shirley Chisholm poster in the background. So sorry about that. Oh, and I go by she, hers in terms of pronouns. But to jump into the questions, which have been very engaging, I obviously wanted to get right to them. I think in general, diversity is always an asset in a workplace. And like Nada was saying, kind of bringing your lived experience to bear in workplace discussions, no matter kind of what they are, I think is only a resource. The same vantage point isn't represented over and over and over again. So I was born without a left hand. I have a visible disability, and I'm a professor. And so, the classroom is my workplace. So in terms of being able to demonstrate value in the workplace, I think one of the ways I've been able to do that is actually in a role as a mentor. So I have a lot of students. I teach a class, Disability Theory and Politics, but even in the classes where the subject matter isn't on disability, I have a lot of students with visible and invisible disabilities who come to me for mentoring. So having me in the university, kind of gives them a resource, somebody who they can see who maybe has shared, the experience of discrimination, perhaps in different facets of their life, and they feel safe coming to me, disclosing their disabilities, asking for advice on how to navigate them. So I've seen my role as a mentor as a real kind of resource in the workplace. In terms of skills, it's interesting because, I'm going to make kind of a controversial claim that I think one of the things that disabled workers bring to workplaces is resourcefulness. Like I've always tried to figure things out as someone with one hand. I was the first kid in my class to tie my shoes and I found new and innovative ways. And in fact, I think that having a disability is me an incredibly creative person, right? How do I problem solve? How do I figure this out in a world that wasn't designed for me in the first place? And so, I think that is one way that I've been able to do that. And in my teaching, for example, I have nerve pain down my right arm from overuse. And so instead of writing comments in the margins of papers, I now actually give audio feedback. And in fact, my students say it's the best feedback they get from any professor because it's like a meeting that they don't have to show up to, right? They just open an audio file, and for 5 minutes, I explain the strengths and weaknesses of the paper. And it actually, at first I was worried it would be a disservice to students, but after hearing back from them, it's actually been a real resource.
So I guess I'll go next. This is Billy speaking. And first question, as far as what value I've been able to bring to workplaces, really to piggyback off what everyone else is saying, I think one big thing is accessibility. And whether it was my internships at Seacrest Studios or where I'm currently working now at the Exceptional Children Institute Center, one of my biggest one of the biggest goals I've had, and one of the biggest goals I think every workplace has come to have in working with me is that you want to make sure that things are accessible, whether it's a website, whether it's like for example, when I was at the studio, it was a radio and TV studio, and they had a lot of the buttons they had to operate the studio were not very accessible. And so one thing I did was I put Braille on the button so that it would be labeled so that if other blind people, and by the way, I'm totally blind progressive hearing loss. So if other blind people came in there, they could use it and they could understand it. And so I was always a big ambassador for accessibility and helping others. And that goes into the second question about skills I leverage. I'm very personable. So I love connecting with people. I love talking with people. And I'm very big on understanding people, because I can't physically see them. I think one thing that's helped me a lot is being able to understand people's inner selves, understand who they are as a person, and really be able to, even if I don't relate to them on every level, being able to find relatability with everyone, understanding with everyone, and being able to be accepting and embracing. I think that's really helped me connect with others and network, and also just being able to be in the right circles and being open to trying new things and meeting new people.
So this is Marty, and I think I forgot to say earlier I use she, her pronouns, but kind of just along the same lines as what everyone else is saying is, bringing my personal experience is really helpful in the people that I work with. At Centers for Independent Living, so we have 5 core programs, and one of them actually is peer counseling or peer mentorship. And so we have people on our staff who, their job title is peer mentor, but I would say it kind of is a thread that goes through everything that happens at our agency. And so even though that's not my title, it's definitely a huge part of how I do the work that I do. And I've just been, thinking about this and listening to everyone's answers. And something that's just in my mind right now is, I don't know if I can call it a skill but more so just a trait. But I am a very empathetic person, and I find that tends to be really common with people that deal with depression and anxiety and that type of issue. Sure, it's not true of everybody, but it's certainly not uncommon. And I think I was just thinking about, being younger, people call you like overly sensitive, they put different labels on what it is, but it definitely is a huge part of what enables me to do the work that I do. I have people come to me with all kinds of different programs. Advocacy is a big word that can mean a lot of different things to people. But so it can be almost like a double-edged sword sometimes, in the sense that there are a lot of people that come to me with problems that are way bigger than anything I can fix. And so, it can be a struggle to take that on and not get too weighed down by that. So I guess just sort of a caution to anybody who wants to go into services or the nonprofit sector. But I'll say it also, I think there's a lot of value in just being able to empathize with another person. And more than anything, just listening to people, I think, is really huge. Even if I can't solve their problem or I can't, fix it necessarily, it seems very common to me that the people that have called me, I may be like the 7th or 8th agency that they have called to try to get help with whatever their problem is. And I think it's a really common experience to feel like no one will listen to you. And so just giving people the time and the space to tell their stories, I think that in and of itself has a lot of value. So just a thought.
And this is Joanne. I'm the moderator, and I can attest to some of the consumers that Marty has talked to since I listened in on some of the meetings that she has. Real quick, because I forgot to do this. I also have a disability, and my disability is osteogenesis imperfecta. And just to give you a visual representation, I am Asian American with jet black hair, and I am wearing a denim shirt. I'm in a wheelchair, and in the back, it's really interesting. My door is and windows. It's half glass and like half solid. So the bottom part is transparent. So you will occasionally see a set of feet just walking by. And during meetings, we'll play a game of guess who shoes just floated behind you. So moving on to the next question. What kind of challenges have you encountered in your professional life due to your identity? Oh, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
If I could jump in, this is Amber. I do think one of the challenges as a person with a disability is sometimes being worried that in asking for accommodations, you're asking for special treatment. And I feel like that's an experience that I've heard from a lot of my own students, even trying to use disability services to get extra time on exams, for example. And so, you know, disability is very much a discredited, stigmatized identity, still oftentimes at large, despite the fact that there is counterculture in the disability rights movement, disability pride, and we have other ways of thinking about disability. But I think in a lot of mainstream culture, disability is something that can remain very shameful for people. They don't want to disclose it. They don't want people to treat them differently or pity them. Or think that they're trying to rig the system. There's a lot of anxiety about perceptions of corruption. And so, you know, I have grown into being very comfortable asking for accommodations. I need a sit and stand desk because of the nerve pain I was talking about earlier. I need to use Dragon naturally speaking software to help me with typing when my arm gets really tired. And as an academic, I knew that the ADA guaranteed these things, but I had to find the confidence to ask for their entitlements. I'm not asking for special treatment, right? They're guaranteed to me under the law. So I think that sometimes you need kind of one of the challenges is that mental breakthrough of thinking about it not as special treatment, but as something that all citizens require in order to flourish. And I think another challenge too, completely separately from the issue of accommodations, is just in general, like pace of life in a fast-paced American workplace. So there have been times where I have needed to be I have gone through multiple surgeries. I have, and despite the protections of the FMLA, you know, I'm just not producing work at a fast rate. Or I'm on medication that just kind of gives me brain fog, right? And so I'm, you know, as an academic, my workplace is in academia, you know, the tenure clock is constantly in the background. But I'm that sometimes in disability studies, they call it crip time. You know, I'm on crip time. I'm in survival mode. I'm just trying to, and so I think sometimes one of the challenges I face is coming to grips with maybe not buying into the fast-paced pace of life that defines the American workplace, and kind of resisting that in order just for my own well-being.
Yeah, I can also add to that. I agree with everything that you were talking about, Dr. And that is something I can relate to as well. So for me, also one of the biggest challenges, as I mentioned, I studied computer science and international relations. And when I graduated college, I was really interested in software engineering positions. And if anyone here is interested in that or has an idea of how the interview process goes, there's the technical interview And what that means is that you have 1 hour, they give you a really difficult, like algorithm question, and then in less than 30 minutes, you have to tell them what you're thinking and then code it down. And at the beginning of my career, when I was in college applying for internships, I had that exact same feeling. There's a lot of focus in the tech industry on quote, quote, cognitive abilities. So if you tell them for any reason, you need accommodations, I need more time, I need this and that, they would always kind of argue back, then how can you do the job? And so at first I wouldn't ask for accommodations and I just wouldn't do well because, that's not how my brain works. That's not, like you said, I wouldn't process these things fast. I wouldn't remember all of those things and I wouldn't be able to talk to someone and code at the same time. So I definitely struggled a lot at the beginning of my career. I just wasn't able to do it. And it was very sad for me because I knew I was very capable. I knew I was strong and I can do this, but it was that conversation. So later on, I decided that if a place or a company or organization would take what I say in a negative way, that was an indication for me that I would not want to be there because that's part of who I am. That's part of, the way I work and the way I navigate the world. And if that was something that makes them feel uncomfortable, then I would not be a happy person there, a happy employee there. So I started the accommodation conversation and I started asking what kind of accommodations you have in place. How do you, what kind of things do you have in place for people who, have disabilities, invisible disabilities? How do you make your interviewing processes and your work itself more accessible? And to be very honest, there were a lot of places that would either not respond or would just, we move to a different direction. And I stopped feeling bad about it because before I would feel bad because I wasn't really being honest about myself and about, what I need in order to succeed. And I used to feel that, like, you said, I felt like, they would think that I'm trying to trick the system. If everyone's going through the same process, why would we do something differently for you? But that was enough for me because I would not want to work there. But on the plus side, there were a lot of amazing places that were very inclusive, very accepting, and really understood that, getting accommodations is not getting tricking the system, but rather, there's a difference between equality and equity. Equity is, adding those different things so that everyone is being evaluated or having the exact same resources on the same level. So to find those places that understand that, and for me as well, to understand how important it is to, ask for accommodations and feel good about who I am and feel good about all of my skills was really important and really made a huge difference for me. I started, getting whether it was extended time or, time to think or whatever it was, has really helped me significantly, not only in succeeding in what I wanted to succeed, but also in my own confidence in myself. When you're trying all of these things that are not really fairly assessing your skills and your abilities, it's very easy to kind of feel like, my disability is weighing me down. But the truth is your disability brings you up. Like we said, it gives you a completely new experience and, background of how you view the world, how you understand the world, how you empathize with others, and how you are more accessible. So that was the main challenge I faced, but really growing into that and being able to feel comfortable first before even asking for accommodations and feeling okay to speak about it and to just, there's nothing wrong with it. It's amazing, has really helped me kind of face some of those challenges or get over them.
This is Billy speaking. I definitely agree with everyone else just said. I definitely can relate to that. I know for me, probably the two biggest challenges thus far, definitely one is accessibility. And I will say one thing that one regret I do have during high school and middle school is that I didn't focus as much on technology as maybe I should have, and learning technology and learning about all the new technology, because growing up, I was always a Braille reader. I was always someone who loved to read my fingers, and also because of my hearing loss, some of the screen readers and the more accessible technology was not ideal, at least for me at the time. I definitely have come around to it a lot more as I've gotten older, but at the time I didn't think it was ideal for me. But I had to realize that that's the way of the world now. The world is moving, and I'm coming to enjoy technology as I've gotten older and really appreciate what it's done for the world. But at the time, I didn't learn as much as I should have. And it's definitely a major part of the workplace. So I will take ownership in that and say that maybe at times I didn't know as much technology, but I also think that accessibility in general, because sometimes you'll have workplaces that make strange websites or think that graphics and images are, because they're artistically good, they're good for people that might be totally blind and use screen readers. So I've definitely struggled with that, but I think that's also part of my calling and being able to make sure that those websites and those resources are accessible for all. So I think that's one of my biggest challenges. And another big challenge, kind of tying up the accommodations and issues such as that, I think that I haven't had it directly happen to me, but I definitely have felt the undertones of it, is people that make assumptions and people that assume just because someone had one accommodation before me that I might need that same accommodation. I think that sometimes people, or they'll say, oh, you're totally blind. How are you going to do this? You know, you can't see this. So they don't really take the time necessarily to teach you that. And so sometimes those assumptions get in the way, not only you getting a job, but maybe you getting a job and also trying to talk people into having certain accommodations. And that's one thing I will say, is that it's important to remember that just because I might have a certain accommodation doesn't mean that another totally blind person or another person with disability in general will have the same accommodation. We all have different accommodations. And so I think it's important not to make assumptions that, oh, we all have the same accommodations, or this accommodation will work because, you know, it might work in my head and it works good. So I think those are the two biggest challenges. I think accessibility and people that make assumptions, or employers that make assumptions, assuming that you might need something that might not be beneficial or helpful for you.
And I'll just chime in. This is Marty. So I definitely echo everything that everyone else is saying. But you know, it's strange because where I work now, it's kind of like this little utopia for people with disabilities, because it's you know, for people with disabilities, run by people with disabilities. So I don't think there could be a more like accepting, supportive environment for a person with a disability to work in. But it's interesting because since I've started working there, my identity has really evolved quite a lot, because you know, initially I came from a perspective of I'm not disabled enough to like claim that label. I think this is probably common for people with hidden disabilities, but I just felt like it almost would be like offensive to people with like, you know, very serious visible disabilities for me to be like, yeah, I'm disabled too, or there was this whole weirdness about it. And so that has definitely, you know, changed over time, and I'm very, you know, comfortable and confident in claiming that as part of my identity now. But it took a lot of, you know, time and working with other people, you know, with all kinds of disabilities. But, you know, an example is, you know, if I'm having like a really bad depressive episode and like I can't get out of bed and go take a shower, like I don't think it matters what the reason is. If you can't do like your activities of daily living, you know, I don't think it really is all that relevant if that's because of something going on in your mind or something going on physically with your body. So, you know, I think sometimes people get hung up on whether or not they're allowed to say that they're disabled or they're a person with a disability. And I think that comes into play for sure with asking for any kind of accommodation. And I can tell you that is a lot of the work that I do, is helping people request accommodations. And it's almost surprising how much of that is just kind of, you know, giving people the pep talk of, no, you are totally entitled to accommodation and it's totally valid for you to request some help. And so I don't know, that's just, it's been interesting to me. And I think this is maybe a little too much of a tangent, but this whole thing with working from home, it's so crazy to me, like how much that has shifted in the pandemic. And I see it as kind of a silver lining kind of thing, because Personally, like that's an accommodation that I need to use sometimes because I have panic attacks when I drive and I don't live near my office. So sometimes I just need to work from home. But it's the kind of thing that is a good accommodation for a lot of people. But the response in the past was, no, that's not something we can do. Not really for any especially valid reason, but just no, we won't consider that. And now all of a sudden, everyone's working from home. And I think we've seen that, you know, a lot of people can get their work done or even more work done if they're working from home. So it's just been interesting to see how this changed in this last, I don't know, 6 to 8 months, however long it's been now.
I just also want to add something just to also cover for folks who identify as part of the LGBTQ community. I agree with everything that everyone says, but another challenge that I have also personally faced is intersectionality and how that is received in general. A lot of times people see you as one identity, and a lot of times it's what they see outside. So a lot of times the first identity they perceive you is your race. And then if you try to introduce a little bit more than that, you know, I also have a disability, or I'm also a member of the LGBT community, that makes it very complicated a lot of times for people to be like, oh, you're this and that, you know? So something very specific to, you know, being in the workplace or finding opportunities has been the question, how LGBTQ friendly are they? And can I ask that question, how safe am I going to feel in this place, especially if this, you know, job or if this conference or if this organization is, you know, in a location far from me and I don't really know how the community is. And something that really helped me and advice I really give is to also feel comfortable to bring that up, feel comfortable to, you know, bring out all of your identities and just demand for change, demand for safety, demand for whatever it is that you need. But at the same time, when I first, you know, joined my you know, some of my internships, you know, people would get really surprised when I would talk or say anything about, you know, the LGBTQ community, and they would often refer to me, you know, oh, she is an LGBTQ. And I would say, you don't have to say that. There are other terms that you have to say. So a lot of times, you know, we feel the need to educate about a lot of things, even beyond disability and, you know, sexual orientation or gender identity. But it's also really important to step back and know that, you know, it is not your job to educate others, you know, it's not your job to put that emotional labor into doing that. But what matters is that, you know, you have to know that you have the right to be wherever you want to be. You have the right to have access to all of these opportunities, regardless of any intersecting identity you may or may not have. Yeah, just wanted to add that just to make sure, you know, I also got a chance to speak about that.
This is Sue-Ann. Thank you everyone for answering that question. It looks like we have time for one more. This hour really flew by. What can students do now that will best prepare them for their career success? Very practical. What can students who either identify as LGBTQ or identify as having a disability do that can prepare them for career success?
I can speak a little bit about it. I just wanted to give time if anyone else wanted to speak. Sorry, again, this is Nada. I forgot to mention my name a couple of times before. But for me, as a recent grad and someone who spent a lot of time trying to find jobs, and I know this is what you hear everywhere, but I really want to emphasize the value of networking. A lot of times, if you know, go and like, you know, you really think of a career path or a certain job or whatever it is, it's really, really helpful to connect with people. And I know not everybody has that access or has that privilege of having those networks that you have easy access to. But LinkedIn has been a life changer for me, and just creating an account, seeing this person that has a title I want to have or has this career path that I want to have, and just sending a message and just really trying to connect with them, get advice, has been really helpful. In terms of, you know, different identities, something that has really changed my life has been finding community. For example, out in tech, it focuses on, you know, folks or allies for the LGBTQ community and jobs in tech, for example. And there are so many organizations like that where you find a supportive community who is willing to build you up and wants to build you up and wants to help you succeed. That has been really incredible because these people would have very similar, not exactly the same, but similar identities as yourself and understand those struggles. So that has been really helpful. And the last thing for me was also asking for accommodations, and also, before even that is self-reflection. So ask yourself, who am I? What is important to me? What do I need? And making sure that you are honest with yourself and authentic in your own needs, and how you communicate that to others is really important, because at the end of the day, what matters is you. And whatever career that you choose, you also have to feel good about it. So reflecting on yourself first, and then, going for it, knowing what you want and what you need.
This is Billy speaking. I would definitely say, networking is definitely my number one. Just making sure, find internships while you're a student. That's one thing that I did. Actually, I have the job I have now, very much thanks in part because I was an intern at ECAC at one point, and I showed them what I was capable of and what I could do, what I could bring to their organization, and it led to me having a job now. So definitely do internships, network. And also, don't be afraid to change. Be open. I know that sometimes you might feel like, this is career for me. This is career for me. And then you might try something and then realize it's not the career for you. So there's always room to change. So don't think that you're wrong for changing your career at some point in time, or you're wrong for trying different things out. So be open to try new things, and just make sure you network and just be open to having different internships and just be open-minded. That's what I would say.
This is Marty, and I will also ring the internship bell. I have this job because I started as an intern. So there's a ton of value in that. But I think one thing that's really helpful is to not compartmentalize your different identities, because I think, speaking of, how we interact with society in the past, that has been what a lot of people have been forced to do. And we're making progress with that, thank goodness, and things are getting better. But, if you're interviewing for a job, applying for a job, bring your whole self back. And I think if you start out like that, it's going to serve you well throughout the whole career. If you start out as kind of hiding a part of yourself, or, burying one part of yourself, then you are going to feel like you have to keep doing that. It's easier to just start out, I feel like, just being your true self. And that doesn't mean you have to put all of your business out there on the table and whatnot, but, don't be ashamed of who you are, or feel like you have to hide, your identity, because it's so much more of an asset, I feel like. And so if you start out with, positioning it from that perspective, I think that only builds and increases throughout your career. I think when you can incorporate, your own personal interests and passions into what you're doing, that creates opportunities. And I know sometimes, it can be hard to imagine how that would work, but that's been my experience, and that's what I see. So, just bring your whole self to this. And I think that will really well.
This is Amber, and I'll just add on a really practical note, get to know your professors. I always tell my students this, right? Like, you're gonna need letters of recommendation, whether to go to graduate school or law school, or to go directly into the workforce. And, I'll have students that ask for letters of recommendation, but they've never come to my office hours. Maybe they were in a giant lecture. And so I can only write kind of the boilerplate basic letter, because they never really made the effort to get to know me. And I know sometimes for students, they can feel like they're uncomfortable, like they're manipulating me to try to get a letter or something, but I don't think about it that way, and I don't think professors do, right? So by the time you're in a senior seminar, if you don't have professors that recognize you in the halls and know you on a first name basis, right? That's an, something that you should really think about, kind of building some deeper relationships that you can count on, because your professors really want to support you as you go out, after graduation, as you go out into the workforce, so they need to know you to support you.
Thank you for that input. I definitely agree with every single one. I will, because I am working today and I am at the Career Center, I just need to put in a quick plug for students who are watching or participating. The Career Center will help you with mock interviews. One thing that I found was important when I was looking at jobs and careers was it was really important for me to match my values to the companies. So we have assessments at the Career Center that will help you find out what your values are and see what kind of careers match those values. So utilize us, utilize our office. Your tuition is paying for it. So once again, I would like to thank all of the panelists for joining this really rich and informative discussion. We are going to wrap up. It looks like the networking booth is open. So those of you who want to go on that particular section, you will be randomly assigned to a recruiter and you'll have a couple of minutes to chat with them, and then it'll jump you over to another person. In a couple of minutes, the sessions tab will go live, and everyone on this panel, including myself, because I think I have a spot in there, we'll see, will be in that particular session or section to answer any questions you may have. I will be in there for until 1:30, but the sessions are actually open until 2, so it just depends on how long the panelists are willing to stay. And then we have the expo booths. So we have a lot of recruiters that are here today, so make sure you go and check them out and just take advantage of this next hour to get to know people, to get to meet and network with people in the community. So I think that is it. And panelists, thank you so much again for being here. And you can go to your sessions when you are ready. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.